What if I told you that some of the most powerful moments in European history were never meant to be remembered? Not the famous coronations, not the grand wars everyone studies in school, but the quiet betrayals, the hidden letters, the forgotten heroes, and the stories buried on purpose. Tonight we were stepping into the untold side of Europe, the side that shaped the modern world in ways most people never realized. Close your eyes for a second and imagine this. It's the year 1348. The streets are silent. Church bells echo through empty towns. A mysterious illness is spreading fast. People don't know what causes it. Some believe it's divine punishment. Others blame poisoned wells. In just a few years, the Black Death would wipe out nearly a third of Europe's population. But here's what most people don't talk about. Out of that devastation came transformation. Labor became valuable. Ordinary workers could demand wages. The rigid feudal system began to crack. Entire social hierarchies shifted. Tragedy, unbelievably, helped spark the rise of a stronger middle class. History isn't just about destruction. It's about what rises from it. Now let's move forward a few centuries to a cold room in 1648, where exhausted diplomats gathered to sign what became known as the Peace of Westphalia. Most people have never heard of it, yet this agreement quietly reshaped global politics. Before this moment, Europe was constantly entangled in religious wars. Borders were fluid. Power was personal. But these treaties introduced the idea that nations should respect each other's sovereignty, that borders mattered, that states, not emperors or religious authorities, would shape international order. The modern world map? It traces back to those negotiations. But Europe's untold history isn't only about rulers and treaties. It's about ordinary courage. In 1943, in Nazi-occupied Denmark, something remarkable happened. When word spread that Jewish citizens were about to be deported, every day Danes, fishermen, teachers, students organized a secret rescue operation. In small fishing boats, under cover of darkness, they ferried over 7,000 Jewish people to safety in neutral Sweden. No grand speeches, no massive armies, just neighbors protecting neighbors. It remains one of the most successful collective rescue efforts of World War II. And yet, many people outside Europe rarely hear this story. Europe has also hidden stories of innovation that changed her life today. Did you know that during the Islamic Golden Age in Al-Andalus, Muslim-ruled Spain, cities like Cordoba had street lighting, public libraries, and advanced medical knowledge, while much of Europe was still emerging from instability? Scholars translated ancient Greek texts into Arabic, preserved them, and later reintroduced them to Western Europe. Without that exchange of knowledge, the Renaissance might have looked very different. History is rarely isolated. It's interconnected, shared, borrowed. And speaking of the Renaissance, here's something many people don't realize. Florence's rise wasn't just about art. It was about banking. The Medici family quietly built a financial empire that funded artists like Michelangelo and supported scientific thinkers like Galileo. Art flourished because money flowed behind the scenes. Beauty often follows economics. Even the great age of exploration holds lesser-known truths. When we hear about explorers like Christopher Columbus, we often imagine bold adventure. But European expansion was also fueled by intense competition between empires. Portugal and Spain were racing each other across oceans. Secret maps were guarded like treasure. Navigation techniques were state secrets. In fact, Portugal once kept its maritime maps so confidential that revealing them could be considered treason. Control information, control power. And then there are the revolutions. The French Revolution is famous for its dramatic scenes, the fall of the Bastille, the rise and fall of kings. But one of its quieter legacies was the spread of the metric system. In the chaos of revolution, France sought rational order, a universal way to measure the world. Today, most countries use that system. It was born out of upheaval. Even everyday life carries hidden history. The fork, for example, wasn't widely accepted in parts of Europe until the Middle Ages. When it was first introduced from Byzantium to Italy, some religious leaders criticized it as unnecessary luxury. Now imagine a world without it. Small cultural shifts shape civilizations. Let's talk about something more emotional. After World War II, Europe lay in ruins. Cities like Warsaw and Berlin were reduced to rubble. Families were separated. Economies collapsed. The trauma was unimaginable. And yet from that devastation came an idea once considered impossible: former enemies working together. The European coal and steel community, the foundation of today's European Union, was designed to make war between France and Germany not merely unthinkable, but materially impossible. By sharing control over coal and steel production, the key materials for warfare, countries tied their futures together. Peace wasn't just hoped for, it was engineered. Now think about that. After centuries of near-constant warfare, Europe chose integration over revenge. That shift may be one of the most extraordinary transformations in human history. But untold stories also live in forgotten individuals. Take Sophie Scholl, a young German student who, during World War II, distributed leaflets criticizing the Nazi regime as part of the White Rose movement. She knew the risks. She continued anyway. She was arrested and executed at just 21 years old. Her final words reportedly reflected courage and belief in a better future. History often remembers generals. It sometimes forgets students. And then there are the scientific revolutions. When Nicolaus Copernicus proposed that the Earth revolved around the sun, it wasn't just a scientific shift, it was a philosophical earthquake. Humanity was no longer at the center of the universe. That idea challenged centuries of belief. Europe became the stage for intellectual upheaval that reshaped how humans understood reality itself. And here's something surprising. Europe's borders, languages, and identities are far more fluid than many assume. The continent has over 200 languages. Empires rose and fell: Roman, Byzantine, Ottoman, Austro-Hungarian. Entire nations appeared and disappeared within decades. The map you see today is only a snapshot, not a permanent design. So what makes Europe's untold history so powerful? It's the pattern. Crisis followed by reinvention. Conflict followed by cooperation. Collapse followed by creativity. Behind every grand monument, the Colosseum in Rome, the castles of Scotland, the cathedrals of France, are generations of ordinary people adapting, surviving, and rebuilding. And maybe that's the real secret. European history isn't just kings and conquests. It's resilience. It's a continent that survived plagues, wars, religious divisions, revolutions, and ideological battles, and repeatedly transformed itself. The next time you see a medieval castle, imagine not just knights and royalty, but farmers, blacksmiths, and children who lived within those walls. The next time you hear about a war, think about the treaties quietly drafted afterward, the decisions that shaped decades of peace. History isn't only what explodes loudly. Sometimes it's what changes quietly. And maybe the most untold truth of all is this: the Europe we know today was inevitable. It was built slowly, painfully, courageously by people whose names most of us will never learn. So now I want to ask you, which hidden story surprised you the most? Because the more we uncover the past, the more we understand the present and maybe even shape the future a little more wisely. And trust me, there are still many secrets waiting to be uncovered.